All right, good evening, Springs BOE. We're live and you are being recorded. You're good to go.
Great, thank you very much, LTV. It is shortly after 7. We're going to call the meeting to order, a special meeting prior to the workshop. Julie, would you do roll call, please?
Sure. Barbara Dayton.
Here.
Pat Brabant.
Here.
Eric Frederickson.
Here.
Emma Field.
Here.
And Tim Frazier's absent.
Great, thanks very much. We could rise to the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
It is.
Great.
Right.
I pledge allegiance to the
To
flag
the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you very much.
Take a motion to close the meeting.
Excuse me?
We'll close the meeting and then reopen it for the work
Let's do the
session.
resolution.
Yeah, I have to do the resolution.
Okay.
Oh, so we have one item on this agenda. So be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves Regina Brandow as the impartial hearing officer for case number 598152 at an hourly rate of $100. Do I have a motion?
I make the motion.
Second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Great, thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting and go into the budget workshop?
I make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Great. Hi, Mike.
He's to
I
unmute.
can see him over there. Is he talking?
Let me just tell him to unmute.
Mike, you're on mute. M for mute.
Mute.
Can't open it.
Is Mike talking?
No, I went through the board. Phil, is this on board doc?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't open it.
You can't open board docs, or you can't
You
open
don't
the
board
link.
doc, you can't open the,
There's a link there.
you go to the agenda. I got the meeting. Hold on. Right. Agenda. In here. Should be. Open.
Go back out.
I did 3 times. You got a hard copy?
Yeah. Julie, there's somebody else open on this screen. It looks like it says board and that's on mute. Is that us or is that something else? Mike, are you off of mute yet?
You take mine, because I have notes on my hard copy. Here.
No, I just,
No, take that.
I can read that up there.
Well, she's gonna put it on the full
That one on
screen.
the right
Yeah,
there.
I know.
there.
Oh, hey, Mike, there you
Can
are.
you hear me,
Yay!
Julie?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Because I can't hear a word from you guys.
Oh, okay.
Got it?
Thank you.
Can you hear me, Mike? John, can you maybe?
I can see and hear him like if I was at home on Zoom.
Why can't he hear us?
Yeah, but why would that is on
There's no speakers on?
I think he
that one on the right is on.
No, he says he
on mute.
can't. Mike, can you hear us? Your volume doesn't look like it's on, Jules. There's an expired. And it's just hard now.
Can you hear us now, Mike?
That's just for the speaker.
I don't know. How we go, always set it up. Technical
LTV,
difficulty.
can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, if he can't hear
Mike,
your mic
Mike,
is,
can you hear me now?
No, one of our participant can't hear us, Mike Henry.
Mike, can you hear me?
That's the board that you're connected to.
Right, but why can't Mike hear me? Go to. This is how we always
Oh,
do it.
that one speaker has an X, so click that speaker in the bottom. Yes, and take the X off.
Which one?
If you take
That
these
one.
two, right, double this one,
Go up into the
double
left.
that one, but I'm saying it's easier to go.
There you go.
Mike, how's that?
Right.
No, that's what I did before.
Mike, can you hear us?
No, now we're echoing. That's why you don't want that on, I think.
This is how we always set it up. I don't understand what the problem is.
You want to text him, maybe he should like log out of the meeting and join back in?
Yeah, maybe. I'll do that.
This is nothing different than I normally do.
That's the increase though, right?
No, that's the same 53 more.
If he can't hear us, then it's probably his speaker,
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
because I could hear him on my computer.
You can hear us from home.
Yeah, well, yeah.
The home can hear us,
Right.
so it's something with Mike.
You're right.
All right.
I was
So
looking
I'm
at this
texting.
end,
Yeah, this is the current.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is just the increase, which means that
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we should do that.
and it should be a source.
I don't know why you have an X at the bottom. That bothers me.
That's stopping the echo.
But I'm
from going
supposed
on.
to, because otherwise I'm hooked to that. It's gonna echo if I don't.
Okay.
Otherwise there would be two sound
I still hear
feeds
you
coming out.
guys On Zoom, so this is work, something.
People at home can hear.
Yeah, if Mike can't hear us, it's something with on Mike's side.
Okay.
We're fine on our end.
Deb, while we're waiting for Mike to log back in,
Mhm.
I know we talked about going over, somebody had a question again about, how do we verify residencies of new students? So maybe let's
Yeah.
just talk about that right now
Okay.
while we're waiting.
So your application for registering a child is online.
Mhm.
They need at least 2 proofs of residency besides their affidavit or their deed or their rental agreement. So like PSEG bill, Optimum bill, bank statement, something.
So they
like-
actually need 3 things. They need 2 bills plus either their deed or their lease or an affidavit.
An affidavit.
Okay.
Okay. And sometimes those are delayed in getting to us, and a child cannot register without those items. When someone comes to us and says, look, the only thing I have is an affidavit, I don't have any bills at that address yet, we will do a home visit. And either that's our social worker or our security guard will go to the home to verify that. But then we track it, looking for them to get those information, especially like payroll statement has their address on it. Eventually they open up a bank account to cash the payroll check, so then we have those documents. If there is ever a real curiosity or we're not sure, we will call in a private detective. And what the state ed department says on that, it cannot be just one time, because it is possible that somebody is sleeping at the grandma's house on Sunday night because the parents were away for the weekend. So you have to see it consistently over, they usually say 5 to 7 days. And those are the steps that we really take. The other thing that we do when we are in doubt is we send a letter. So it's come to our attention that you may not be living in the district. You have until Friday, the 7th of April to prove residency, or on the 17th of April, your child will no longer be allowed to stay at the school. The commissioner has ruled after February against school districts who kick children out. So that's when we will tell somebody in writing, we recognize and you agree that you don't live in the district, but your child gets to stay for the remainder of the school year, but no, in September, your child has to register in the new school district, your transportation will be provided. And again, we pen that and we follow up on it for September so that child doesn't come back into the school. But I've only learned that the commissioner, before February, they will back the school district, but after February, they say, guys, what are we, what are
You
we
mean
talking
after
about here?
February of each year or
Yeah.
this year in particular?
Yeah,
Okay.
the year that you discover a child doesn't live in the district.
Right.
And as I told you before, October 5th, that Beds Day is a very important day to us. So we do our due diligence in the beginning of the school year to make sure that if there's a child that hasn't shown up to school, that we don't count that child. Because our state aid is based on that, and you don't want the state aid to be inflated on October 5th and then have to pay the state back.
Right.
So I'd rather be underestimate the number of students on October 5th than overestimate. So we really do our due diligence to find the kids that don't show up for school. The state also has a rule, 21 days before you can drop a student. This particular year, it was really tight with the Jewish holidays, that 21 days came right up against October 5th.
So when there are, because I mean, people are concerned about how did 20 new people register at high school? If ever people bring you the correct documents, you don't have a reason to assume negative. I mean, you can't check everybody who enrolls. Is that correct?
You would need a lot more staff to do that, but we do our due diligence. Our security guards are really good about going out. Our social worker is really good about, we have a bilingual social worker, we have a bilingual security guard. So sometimes you have to wait for those people to be available to do those home visits, but we do home visits. We knock on doors.
Right.
If we don't find somebody there in the afternoon, like on their way home, they might go in the morning on their way in.
Okay. So we do check these people, and anytime that somebody brings up a concern, I've seen kids getting into a car at this particular drop-off point, whatever, that is something that we look into.
Yep, and our bus drivers are very good about that also. They'll tell us when a child stops taking the bus who they know should be taking the bus because they're not of age,
Right.
And they'll alert us, suddenly this kid's not on the bus anymore, Miss Winter, I wonder where he is, and we'll check on it. We have to be diligent about the high school.
I think
Here-
I'm back in. Can you hear me?
Hey, Mike, there you are. Great.
Okay, thanks.
We've just been going over the procedures for checking residency while
Okay.
we break there.
Oh,
So,
no, you're put on. Go ahead.
you have a question?
After you're done, go ahead, I'll finish it after you.
I just asked him to do that to make sure we could hear him, so.
Okay.
Okay, Mike, you can go back on mute. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
So, no, I'm done.
So, Deb, you said that the commissioner made a rule. How long has that rule been in effect?
A long time, for February?
Yeah.
Yeah, a long time. I've been doing residencies for the last, 22 years?
As the ruling, the biggest, like you said, the biggest hit is, elementary school, yes, it's a big hit when you pay for students, especially even regular, but when we go up to the high school. So even them, we have no, like, we could have 20 kids, say we live in Springs, whether special ed, in any program. And we can't, but they're still there till the end of the year. Because we're a feeder district.
The high school's a little different.
Yes,
If I find out that there's a high school kid that moved to Montauk, I will let Montauk and East Hampton know that, and that becomes East Hampton. So Montauk could get a bill for an East Hampton student in February. Yes,
Because he's
absolutely.
still staying in the same school.
Right.
Right.
The point, to your point, it's not having the kids' instruction disrupted.
Right.
Right. So here
Okay.
in this school, you're not going to make them leave this school in the middle of the year, whereas in the high school, that's the only option. So
Things
they
other than
aren't
top
going
of
in
district.
places. Yeah.
Yeah, they have to go, they get billed to the district if it's one of the feeders, and if not, the high school is the one that has to decide whether to retain that kid, but they can't bill me for it. They'd have to bill Hampton Bays for it if the kid moved to Hampton Bays.
So to clarify, that February rule makes it difficult for students in this school, but for students in the high school, they can have a bill in April from Springs and a bill in May from their new district in Montauk or something
Correct.
like that. But when it comes to students in the school, that law makes it a little bit more difficult to enforce.
We've not tested it with a high school student that, let's say, moves to Hampton Bays and wants to stay at East Hampton. Of course, East Hampton's not going to keep that kid in Bill Springs. I won't let that happen. But will the commissioner rule that Hampton Bays is not going to pay the tuition to East Hampton because the kid lives in Hampton Bays? They're going to want the kid to go to East Hampton, go to Hampton Bays. So, but I'm going to fight that I'm not paying that because the kid moved to Hampton Bays. I don't think we've had a case not while I've been here, to test that.
Well, then I mean, our theory is, it was a high school student, and it's after February, and he's attending East Hampton High School, but he lives in Hampton Bays, he's entitled to stay in East Hampton High School. And East Hampton High School's gotta figure out how to get the money,
Yeah, the
or to feed the
commission,
district.
the commissioner would rule, if that parent wanted to test that, the commissioner would probably rule for that kid to continue to stay for the rest of the year, no transportation, okay? But then who's gonna foot the bill? It's not gonna be Springs. I would fight that one. And I know Hampton Bays is not, they're gonna want the kid to come. But it's the right thing to do for that child, especially, let's say, a 12th grader. Are you really gonna kick a 12th grader out of your school in March?
But they
It's not
can't,
right.
but technically, you can't, whether you want to or not, you can't. Real estate commission
The
says you
commissioner
can't.
would rule against you. Even if it's not in your policy, the commissioner would rule against you. Because it's what's right and best for kids.
And we can't, say if a student leaves here in March and goes to another district, we can't send them a bill for if the student stays here.
I mean,
No.
If the child
If
lives in
ch-
another district.
Stays here at Springs and, let's say, moves to Amagansett,
right.
no.
I guess I could feed the
So
district.
on the back end, there's always the issue of enforceability, but then there's the practical elements for our sections and everything else. So once you have a case where, you've gone through your own due diligence in terms of the enforceability aspect, how do you then, when a student is here, keeping our goals of maximum 25 class students, how does that affect you in that regard when these students come in, this late and you've planned classes?
Not easy. You try to balance the classrooms out by giving each teacher, the new child that comes in, do it on a rotation basis. We've never really gone to that 29-30 since I've been here. That would be, something that we'd have to be concerned about. But you still would lose, even if you based it on the fact we don't have room or we don't have enough textbooks, whatever you say. No, you'd have to make it work till the end of the school year. These are children.
I don't believe it's a policy, it's our goal as a board to keep the schools under 20, class under 25, it's not a policy. We have to keep them over 20, we can't. go over
Right, yeah, I
25.
say goal. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a goal.
it's a goal, not a policy, so.
And I think people also need to understand that the question was come up of like, there's multiple people living in one house or families. That is not anything that the school can actually enforce. That's a town.
That's a town code enforcement. The only time we get involved in that is if we feel that there's a safety issue. Some child might say, I'm sleeping in rat-infested basement of the house. I smell fumes all night long. I get headaches. Then we would definitely call that into CPS. That's not conditions we want our children sleeping in.
But legally, if like two kids who are not related came in and said, oh, I live at 2 Elm Street, and the other one says, oh, I live at 2 Elm Street, you accept both of those because as long as proof is shown that they live there, we're obligated to accept that.
Correct. And I think I ran that report for you one year about the multiple families in a home. I can do that through our e-school.
No, I think that, our just people in our community need to understand that, our hands are tied with certain regulations as to how we handle things. And then always, as you say, in somebody's final year, you're looking at what's the best interest of the child.
You're supposed to enroll students immediately and ask questions later. Okay, and that includes special needs students that we may not get a heads up on who come with significant needs. You've got to, enroll that student. You have 30 days to have a new IEP meeting on that student because they may come from a school district where, let's say, they had a very small class, and the smallest class we have is 1211 here. And let's say their IEP reads 611. We tell the parent the closest thing we have to a 611 is a 1211, but just so happens there's only 7 kids in the class right now. There's 2 teacher assistants. So let's see how this works. And within 30 days, we have our own CSE meeting and we determine, is this a good placement for this child? Or do we have to look for that actual 611 placement, which is where the child originally came from?
Which would mean sending someone out of district in that
Correct.
case, right? Okay, all right, great. Thank you very much. Hopefully we've covered this to people's satisfaction. But again, if anybody has a particular question, you can reach out to Deb, you can email her, that would be fine. So, okay, so Mike, glad we got you back.
He's over again.
You gonna put the,
I'm here.
Hey, Mike.
All right.
Mike, I'm gonna start, hand it off to you, okay?
Yep, yep.
Being here. Thanks for all your hard work. All right, so we're at budget number 5. Again, our mission, Spring School is committed to providing a safe environment, enriched educational experience for our students with emphasis on academic, physical, social, and emotional growth. We will prepare our students to be lifelong learners, to respect cultural diversity, embody positive character traits, and to be responsible, caring citizens. Proposed goals. And again, these are proposed for next year, very consistent with our goals now, but maybe a few new objectives on each one. Increase our social, emotional, behavioral, mental, and physical health opportunities for students and staff. Improve governance and communication. Engage in strategic planning for fiscal responsibility and facilities. And 4, bring our student achievement back to pre-COVID levels. What's impacting our budget for 23-24? Inflation. High school tuition, price of fuel for our buses and heating. Health insurance costs are up 15%. BOCES costs projected to increase 3 to 5%. Cost of cybersecurity protection and insurance. Staffing, special ed, custodian, maintenance grounds, and new math curriculum. What we want to maintain, a robust pre-K to 8 educational program that meets New York State mandates, small class size in K to 5, not to exceed 25 students. Staffing that supports New York State mandates and requirements, commitment to instructional technology, including personnel. Extracurricular programs, sports, band, chorus, opera, robotics. School safety, adequate custodial maintenance staff, fully staffed bus drivers and bus monitors, permanent substitute teachers and teaching assistants. Quality professional development and ongoing curriculum work. And remember, the professional development is a requirement of New York State for our teachers. Comprehensive social and emotional growth programs and restorative practices. I want to talk a little bit about enrollment. The board gets to see this on the regular board meetings. If you go to the tab at the bottom, it shows your enrollment in previous years, and I believe the community gets to do on those tabs. What I wanted to show tonight a little bit for you is just from last March 15th to be exact, 2022, to right now, we are up 22 students at the high school. What's helping us balance this budget is we overestimated the self-contained students and the hybrid students. Those are the inclusion students that are in classrooms with 2 teachers. Otherwise, we would be in serious trouble this year in making this budget work. Mike and I went back to the drawing board, Barbara, after your questions about building in, because what we don't want for next year is mid-year cuts. So we put our self-contained to a reasonable level, giving us maybe 1 buffer, just 1. Because remember, all students are entitled to an education until they're 21. So we're just not sure of how many kids will actually graduate. So you just can't roll our 8th graders to 9th and take the 12th graders out and say it's a wash. We just don't know, and we're trying to gather that information from the high school, but it's too soon. So Mike and I did put a buffer in of almost 22 regular ed students, but remember, the regular ed student is only like 24,000 something next year, where the hybrid was in 40,000, and your special ed was 60 some odd thousand. So we kind of shifted the buffer.
We put a buffer in of how many students? You just said
22 gen ed.
I thought we were putting in 10 buffer.
We're up 22 already this
Oh,
year.
right, so yes, well, of course, well, we have to add those in, we
Right.
have to count those, but then we were gonna have an additional buffer
Correct.
for unknowns.
Yeah, so
Right.
32 total.
So
Yes,
additional
okay.
10 on top of the new 22.
Yes,
Oh, on top of last year.
Yes.
Right.
yes.
Okay. Not on
Okay.
top of what our
9 or
current,
10 on
okay.
that.
9 on the special ed self-contained. And 25 on the hybrid.
So we're taking into account all these students that are there and having a buffer in case there are additional students coming in.
Mike will show you what those numbers look like, but I wanted to bring the slide. Now, for our population, we are at 720 for total for this building, pre-K included in that. If you took the pre-K out, we're at 668. We were at 655 last March. And we were at 686 last March. So our own enrollment in our own building has gone up as well.
The hashtag marks there, that is for 2022, correct? That last column?
No, the last column, yeah,
The date?
There's no
Yes.
date on it.
The
yeah,
date is for March of 2022.
yes,
Yeah, I think that's the 3/15/22 date.
yes.
I don't know why it got.
That's where I'm getting my numbers from, okay? And the next slide, I believe, is Mike's. Mike?
What I wanted to do is open up with the tuition so you could see where we made some adjustments. So this is the 5-year lookout for the tuitions, but the second page is where you start seeing the student counts what we used. So for 23-24, we already know that we're up around 330 something regular ed students. So we're moving that to 355 students. We've dropped the hybrid model down from 35 to 30, and we've dropped the special ed from 15 down to 9. In talking with Deb, she feels very confident that the hybrid and the special ed are not really going to significantly change, but it's the regular ed students that we're seeing the biggest influx of students coming in. So that brings us down to is it's almost a 10% increase in tuition just for the East Hampton High School, going from 9.7 million to almost 10.7 million. It's almost $1 million. It's almost $1 million of an increase just in the tuitions for the high school, East Hampton High School. The next slide is that tuition expenditures showing you how the breakdown, the increases and decreases, where they're coming from, whether it's from the increased head count or the increase in rate. And we saw last time that really the increases in rates are not as significant as the head counts are. So really what's driving our increase is more and more students moving into Springs that are high school age and going to the East Hampton High School. All right, next slide is the expense budget summary after flowing all of that in. I can't see it.
Go back to tuition while we're there.
Go back to tuition, Mike.
I'm just trying to do math, that's all.
Which one, which slide are you on? Because I can't see the slide on that board.
Page
On that.
7, I think it's page 7.
The East Hampton High School
Page
tuition
6
plus
first. Go
estimate.
to page 6 first, right? It says right now we have total students in the high school, 374, right?
Yes.
Okay, then we go to page 8. That's page 8. Whatever. You went to 394.
Right.
And we would, I thought Deb said we were just increasing 10 students, not 20. We'll put a buffer of 20 students?
I don't know. When I sat down with Deb when I was there last week, we went through these numbers and it looked like we had a modest, I didn't even think it was a 10 student increase over what we figure the enrollment is going to be next year at the high school. And again, this is this year's enrollment right now.
Yeah, no, this year.
Projected enrollment, 394.
But if you take the eighth,
You're including including the special ed students as well
Right,
in there.
well, I'm just
Yes,
looking at the.
yes,
so I'm just
you are.
trying to clarify it. So on page 6, total number of East Hampton students, doesn't matter what class they're in, right? We have them at 374.
Can you go back to that?
Page 6.
I didn't,
I'm just trying to understand it.
back up.
what we have to do is, let me get the numbers from the 8th grade and the 12th grade.
It's about 5, it's about 2 difference. It's 3 more, there's 3 leaving the high school. If you go 82 to 85, there's 3 less students. There's 85 in 12th grade, 82 in 8th grade.
That's if all the students from the 12th grade
Graduate. No,
graduate.
okay, yeah, so I'm not even, what I'm saying is we have 374 on one, and then we go to the next page and it says, 394, so that's 20 students, not 10.
Right.
Is
So
this
that's-
current as of today, or was there enrollment since this was created?
This is March 30th. There are 374 students at the high school.
Right, that's what you have, right.
Pl-
So,
plus 2 ungraded. So that makes it, the total is 374
Yeah,
with the 2 ungraded.
Right, okay. So that includes all special ed students in that number.
the whole school.
That's the whole.
All our
population.
students
Yeah,
are,
all the hybrid students are in the grade levels.
Okay,
The self-contained kids are in, there are 2 out of the self-contained that are ungraded. The other self-contained students are actually going for regular diploma, but
we
they're
have
just
technology screens,
self-contained.
we have technology screen by screen, or we can't do that.
No, not being, because
It's
I'm,
like if you took 2 pages together.
because I'm
yeah.
I'm remoted into Mike and I'm remoted into
So if
LTV.
you go-
I think where the increase is coming in, when you try to roll these numbers, Mike and I figured that not every student was gonna graduate because the self-contained children definitely stayed to their 21. A lot of the 10th and 11th graders that came in this past year, you got the largest jump ever. You went from a year ago having 78 juniors to 105. They're gonna roll in seniors. You had 77 last March. You have 85 seniors. They just came in. Think about it, almost 11, 12 of them just
No,
came
I
in.
understand, I understand all that. I understand that, you already have them there, you already have you have 372 kids up there, what grade they're in, there's 372 up at the high school, right?
Right now.
Right now, no matter where they're at, right?
Right.
You're projecting next year, we're gonna have 394.
Correct,
So if you took the math, that's 20 students, not 10.
I'm sorry, 20, yes.
And
Is that because of the change from the students that are leaving here in the 8th grade and going up?
No, they're less.
there's 3 less.
Okay.
So you add the buffer of 20 students, not 10 students.
In gen ed, but I took the buffer out of special ed that you had there in the previous year that helped us with this budget this year.
Well, we talked about having just a buffer for 10 students.
Right.
Okay, well,
Do you think that we actually need a buffer for 20 students?
I'm not so sure how many are gonna graduate. The number of students that came in 11th and 12th grade this year was the highest we've ever had.
So you're saying you would like to have a buffer of 20?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and that's to deal with any
On
potential
graduated
influx
students.
plus any ungraduated students.
Correct.
Have you had concerns from the high school that that could be an issue in terms of how many students, do you think there's 10 students in that boat?
The high school hasn't been able to commit to us. We've asked.
How many students every year generally do not graduate?
Not that many, but this increase is what's bothering me, is where we saw the increase in the older students.
11 and
Right.
12.
Which is why you think that they might not be able to keep up with the work and graduate on time, is that correct?
Correct, and they're entitled to an education till they're 21. So even though you have some students here that are 11th grade,
Mhm.
they could be 18 years old or 19 years old.
Okay.
So the kind of safety, you're trying to understand that, what is the dropout rate in East Hampton High School changed?
I don't have that information, Pat.
Are you concerned that might be higher or lower than?
I'm just wondering, we have students coming in 11th and 12th grade, they have to be placed somewhere,
Right,
and then 12th grade, they can drop out of high school at 16,
right,
and we've seen an increase in that.
right.
Because the dynamics of East Hampton is changing too.
Sure. But that, I don't think that's something that we could,
No, we can't forecast, and just be nice information to have, so what I'm saying is, so if you're looking for an increase of 20, then that's what you're looking for.
And we shifted from self-contained and from the hybrid.
Right.
That's where our
Numbers,
buffer was in last year, was there. We just shifted it to accurately reflect where we think
So
the
even though
increase
it's
is gonna be.
20 students, the amount of money you're adding isn't as much more.
Right, because you broke it
There
down.
have been some special ed students who cost a lot. So the dollar amount you're asking for above what it was is not the same as asking for the dollar amount of 20
Right.
students.
And it would take 4 regular students to pay for an extra special ed child.
No, 3. 2.5.
2.5.
2.5.
So,
Right, okay, so we're looking, so this is conversation we want to have is, we have a large budget. We are adding 20 students, that's great. You feel we need to do that. And like Christine said, it's not the dollar amount of the 20 students, because you took some, you didn't put them all into 3 different categories. You put them more into the general population
correct,
category.
because that's where we saw the trend.
Right,
And fingers crossed that that's where it continues.
If you were to get more special ed students and less general ed students, that money is there.
It's the
not
same pot.
allocated. It's the same pot, yes.
Our
So-
bills have been running on a normal average month. You know, you don't take February or April, about $1 million.
right, right.
So that's 10 months, so we're looking at 11 million.
Right. Okay, so the
Okay.
question is, we actually have 374, but you would like to plan on a buffer of 20 students, or, okay.
Mike,
Yeah,
what is the percent per million? Do you know what that number is? There was
I'm
some,
not sure what you mean by the percent per million.
so the percent on the tax, if we are increasing this by $1 million, what percent of our budget is that? We're looking at a 6.39, what percent?
Well, not what percent of the budget, but what percent of the increase?
Increase.
Is that?
Also to clarify, I think
It's about 3%, about 3.2%.
2%, yeah.
the number looked bigger, like our previous budget didn't have a buffer at all. And
No, we did.
what you saw was, what Barbara mentioned in that meeting was we should probably plan for a buffer. So we were piercing the cap, but at that time we weren't at 6, now we're over 6. So while this number looks quite large at 20 students, you also change the proportionality between special ed students and regular students. So numerically, this looks like 20 more, but the dollars and cents is not reflective of that same, what I mean? It's not.
I think
as
Mike has
much
another
money.
slide that shows that.
We should probably look at the dollars now and not just the number.
No, but just
My
break
pages
it
aren't
down.
numbered, I think,
Right, but now we
It's
should
hard
look
to
at the
tell.
dollars.
Yes,
it's on this one, here it is. This is a good example, this is it here. So you've got the gen ed being 1.1 million, and then we deducted here 54,000, and then we deducted from the hybrid almost 90,000. It's still a net of $1 million. If we wanted to back that down,
It just looked like you went double the buffer from a student perspective.
but I
You
shifted it.
didn't do double from a dollars and cents
That's
perspective.
correct.
Okay,
I think that's what the public needs to hear as well.
understand.
Ben's budget summary, Mike?
Okay. All right, so now I factored in the change in the tuitions for the expense budget summary, and you can see all the line items there. Total wages remained unchanged at 12,556,000. Employee benefits at almost 4 million. The tuition for East Hampton High School and special ed, which also includes Southampton and some of the private schools, is now at $11.1 million. BOCE services at 1.5 or almost 1.6 million. Debt service at still at almost 3 million. Interfund transfers, we dropped that even from the last slide down to 228,000. Textbooks are up by 98,000, and largely, I think that's part of that math curriculum is in there.
Correct.
Software budget only goes up by just under $4,000. Equipment essentially is the same. Contractual is going up by 253,000. And like I said, last meeting, contractual includes your heat, power, your light, your water, some of your outside maintenance groups that come in and do different services for the district. And then supplies and materials are up by $35,000, giving us the total $2,877,000 increase budget to budget. Next slide is the tax levy cap calculation, comparing last year's to this year. So you saw last year we had a 5.46% tax cap, and this year it's down to 2.14%. And as I explained last time, the reason it went down is because our debt service payments are no longer climbing. They're starting to level off quite a bit. Next slide is just a summary of our state aid. Again, we have the executive budget last year compared to the executive budget this year. We still don't have a legislative budget. We don't know when that's going to come out. They're already late, but they're not. I think they run on recess for the spring recess period. So it's not going to be. We're anticipating it's not going to be any earlier than the end of April before we see possibly the final administrative legislative budget. But we're looking at roughly a 3.36% increase in our state aid per the governor's runs. The next slide is our other revenues. And as you can see here, 2022-23 is on the right column, 23-24 is the left. Last year we budgeted $127,000 for the pilot. This year I'm increasing it to $157,000 because we did get more money last year. And the way LIPA is operating, they will only pay 2% more than they did the prior year. So I figured safe to put it at $157,000. Interest, I left the same at $15,000. Outside school district sending one student. We've got one student coming to Springs at $98,000. Miscellaneous, which is a whole bag of things, which includes donations, insurance recoveries, the Medicare reimbursements. We're also included in this number. We've got some staff members built into the salary and wages budget who we provide for the SCOPE program, and we will be billing SCOPE for their salaries and their benefits, and that's in that number as well. So the local revenue is up to $708,000. Appropriated fund balance that's the give back, whatever monies we didn't spend at the end of this year will be given back to the taxpayers next year, which helps keep the tax levy down. So I'm anticipating $2,060,000 when I did that, and it results down to a tax levy of $30,955,000, which is a 6.39% increase over last year.
Mike,
Yeah,
sorry, what was the number then that's going to be left in the unappropriated fund balance? I know you said it's going to be less than 4%, right?
well, it's on the next set of slides.
Right, I'm jumping ahead, sorry.
Yep. All right, so the next set starts off with the estimated fund balance, and this is a busy spreadsheet to try to follow. So I start out with the unassigned fund balance as of July 1st, 2022. These numbers, this is right off of our audited financial statement, and last year we ended the year with an unassigned fund balance of 3.37%, and that's the number where we can go up to 4% with. Below that are all of the reserves, including the appropriation for that we had from the end of last year that are coming into this year, that make up that $6,591,000 total. And which that number includes that unassigned fund balance. Now I do my summary where I have projected the revenues to the end of this year at $31,622,000. I projected expenditures at $30,928,000, which gives us a surplus of $694,000. giving us 7,286,000 of projected fund balance and reserves for next year, from last year. Then I summarize those same reserves with the increases to the things like interest that's earned on each of those reserve balances. I take out the appropriated amount from last year to zero that out. It brings me down, that section brings me down to an adjustment number of 3,223,000. So it's the 7,286,000 minus the 4,062,000 gives me a new projected unassigned fund balance number of 3,223,000. Our estimated budget for 2023-24 is 35,766,000. That number times 4% would give us what we can, maximum we can have is unassigned fund balance. So that number is that 4% statutory limit, which is 1,430,000. And I take out the unassigned fund balance over the limit, which is 1,792,000. And that shows me that I have an estimated of 9.1%. Now I go to page 2. Page 2 is a continuation of this page. So I'm re-summarizing what I just went over with the preliminary unassigned fund balance to June 30th, 2023 of 3,223,000. I take out the 4% here of 1,430,000, leaving me an unassigned fund balance of less than statutory limit. Yeah, which leaves me an unassigned fund balance over the limit of 1,792,000. Again, here's a re-summary of the new reserves as of June 30th, 2023. You can see that I've got an appropriated number for 23-24 budget of 2,060,544. And the right-hand far column gives me the changes between the estimate, what I'm proposing to either increase or decrease, giving me a net number. So I've taken $168,000 out of the TRS contribution reserve because that calculates that 371,000. The calculation for that says that it should be 202,000. So I've got to draw that down. So I put it as a drawdown to help me with trying to meet my 4% goal. So the bottom line of all of this is once I summarize all that, and I take the 99, I'm at a negative 99,419 in these adjustments, means that I'm ending up with a percentage of 3.25%. So it's almost even with what it was last year. So we're going to be a little bit short, but that's the only way I can make the 2,060,000 hold at this time. Remember, we still have 3 more months worth of expenses to go through. So these numbers, I'm going to be updating them each month. These numbers could change somewhat. I hope not, but we got to watch our spending.
Right, okay.
Any questions on that?
Mike, just on the emergency repairs, I know it's a pretty large number of 994.
Which number is that?
The reserve fund for repairs, at 950, 946. What is,
Okay, yeah.
So what have we looked at? I understand facilities. I think we're worried about is the boiler. Right, the roofs are all done.
Right. But this is a reserve repair that needs board action or voter approval to pull money out of these last two. The capital and the repair reserve need board action for an emergency or voter approval to draw that down and move it somewhere else. We do every year in our general fund budget, the interfund transfer number. There's always a number put in there to help us with any kind of repairs for like the boiler, for those emergencies. So I transfer that money over to the capital fund itself. And that's where when we come across these crazy major maintenance repair needs, that's where we're able to draw the money from in order to pay those bills.
Right.
So that's a whole separate thing from these reserves.
Mike, is there any cap on the reserves for repairs or capital? Isn't the capital, we pulled out capital
For our,
No, there's no cap on it. It's basically up to what the board decides they want to do. And again, when we go to the voters to increase the reserves or decrease the reserves, that's where we get our authorization from. Some of these other ones, there are calculations that link with it within the guidelines of the law for the reserves. Like I said, the ERS, TRS contributions, there are limitations built into the laws that establish those reserves.
And we did try to establish a reserve for tuition, but it needs legislation in order
Yeah,
to do.
there's nothing in the law that allows that.
That's what?
We've
A
been
reserve for
talking
tuition.
a tuition.
So we
reserve.
do have an increase of extra 20 students.
Right. So far, that has not gotten traction yet in the legislature.
So Mike, when you said there's not a lot of reserve funds to put back into the budget, or is there is amount?
Say that again?
Is there any funds from the reserves to put back into the budget to reduce the budget? What is that? Is
Not
that
without
out there?
voter approval. Well, the only item I have is the one I told you about with the ERS, the TRS reserve.
One that
So
was
that one's
over,
gonna be drawn down by 168,000 to come back in to help us to maintain that $2 million appropriation.
Right.
Right now, that's the only one that's got a little bit of wiggle room.
right. I mean, I think hopefully this coming year, we'll get a better handle on our 5-year plan and the stuff that has to.
Yeah,
be done.
so Michael did that video on that.
Yeah.
And we go back to that.
Right, but then, do we have a realistic idea right now what we're gonna need for capital and repairs over the next upcoming years?
No, we don't.
And are we safe taking money out of there? So I think we need a better idea of that before we move money out of there.
Right. No, just,
And the
yeah.
timing wouldn't work right for this
Well,
anyway.
it seems like a lot of money, but I remember
Yeah.
it was 2 years when the classroom fell apart. It wasn't covered by insurance, it was $300,000.
Yes, exactly.
Roofs are expensive, but all your roofs now
The
are
roofs are done
in good
finally.
shape.
Roofs
You
are
still
done.
have some floors to do
Right,
with the asbestos.
yeah.
But they're not critical.
What's that, Michael?
They're not critical. The thing is with the asbestos tiles on the floor, just because they're asbestos doesn't mean they're dangerous. They're dangerous when they start crumbling and breaking and cracking, because then they become what they call friable. Right now, most of those floors are in good shape, so they're not anywhere near a critical stage where you have to remove them. But if we can use money out of that capital money that we've set aside for repairs that we didn't use during the year, we may be able to look at one room here. Each room was running us about $35,000 to $40,000 to strip up to bait the tiles and then put new tiles down.
The priority, I think, is definitely the bus loop.
Fun bus loop. Okay, but that won't be on the, I understand it can't be on the repairs because we're gonna remodel it.
Well, I think we have to
There'll be
look at
voter
what's going
approval
on.
on that, yes.
Yeah.
We'll look at that, yeah. So I was looking at the big expensive, but look at this, bus loop is one of them, repair it or replace it, whatever we're doing. The boiler's always in it, it's always been, that's $1
Bad
million.
shape.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you've had quotes on that in the past, right, Mike?
What's that?
Was it your facilities, we talked about the boiler, replacing the boiler? With the
We
cost
did
of that one?
replace, we replaced the condensate tank, and I thought we didn't replace, we replaced the condensate tank, and we redid the inner side of one of the boilers, retubed it.
Now the other boiler.
That's the fixtures though, right? The plots of it.
Yeah,
But-
yeah,
Full boiler, right? I mean, we can make repairs on what we have generally.
yeah. I need to find I've been waiting for the quote from the Island Industrial on what it's going to cost us to repair that boiler. I haven't seen it yet.
Neither have I, Mike.
Okay. All right, so I'm glad there was a little area where we could move some money out of that.
Yes, yeah.
All right, ready to move on?
Ready?
All right, the next page in the presentation is the summary showing the proposed expense budget of $35,766,000 versus the 2023 expense budget, which is $32,889,000, showing that $2,877,000 and change increase. Percent increase over 22-23 is 8.75% on the budget to budget, resulting in the 6.39% tax levy increase. The next slide is always one that creates a lot of interest, estimated impact. And again, right now, I can only build this based on the assessed values I got from the town when we assessed the taxes back in December. We don't have new assessed values from the town yet, so I had to keep it the same. So when I look at an increase in the tax rates from last year to this, keep in mind the assessed values have remained the same. But the only difference then is the proposed tax proposal. So what I did here is usually I do 2,000 assessed value, 4,000 assessed value, 6,000 and 8,000. But I know last year or the year before, we were trying to find the mid-range on a house. So again, this year I found it on Zillow, and for the average house in Springs, the fair market value, estimated fair market value is $1,182,000. That equates to an assessed value of $5,320. So you'll see that in 23, 24, the estimated tax increase is $149.96 for the house at a fair market value of $444,000, $299.92 for a house at $888,000. That the median house of $1,182,000 will have a almost $99,000 increase, and a house a little bit higher than that at 1.7 million, almost 1.8 million, would see an increase of $500, almost $600 on their tax bill.
Hey, Mike,
Yep.
these numbers are 2,000, 4,000, 5,000, 8,000. Where did they come? Because
These are numbers that most districts use all along. It's just a guesstimate. It's a flat number. And you'll see on the next slide, it makes it a little bit easier for the layman to be able to calculate what it would be for their individual house.
but Mike, they have to find out what the assessment really is. I mean, I know you asked the town for, but I'm sorry, we got a tax bill back in December and May. Our assessed value is on the tax bill, right?
Yeah, but but I'm not going to list every single assessed value on a report like this. I've got to break it down into different groupings just to give you a ballpark.
I understand that, Mike. I'm asking now if we knew a house, if we go through the assessment, I think Eric here pulled up and it has all of them. We pulled up a house worth $500,000. What are they paying in taxes? We pulled an actual house that's worth $1 million. How much is he actually paying? Because are these numbers, I don't believe are accurate up to what the tax base is on it.
Of the assessed value.
Like I know I have my house assessed at 1.1. I think I'm paying 9,000.
What's the assessed value on your house?
I think it's 1.1.
Well, that's the appraised value.
Right.
That's the fair market value.
How do you get
There's two different numbers.
No, this is the assessed value.
That's the full value, not the assessed
That's
value.
the assessed value. So how do we?
Equalized full value.
Okay.
Aside from the house value, is it fair to say, are you confident that if you just look at the assessed value, so you have that 2.4, you were going to say 6.8,
Yeah.
you fall in there, would you say that the estimated increase is at least accurate in relation to the assessed values that you have?
The last few years that I've gotten some tax bills from people, and I've done the checkout on myself and kind of reviewed my methodology here to see if it was reasonable. It wasn't far off.
So even if your house, say, is the house value, for instance, is 1.182 million, and say, in fact, your assessed value for that house is actually more like 8,000, you can still use this to say my increase is about $599. So even if you don't read it across, you can still say an assessed value at 8,000, the likely increase is $599.84. Is that fair to say?
It is.
Okay.
And I'll show you on the next slide. I do a little run through of the calculation, how the average Joe could take it and calculate it for themselves, just to see. So if you look at the next slide, calculation of tax rate, I have the proposed column and the actual. The actual is what we just billed last year. So we take the total proposed tax levy. We subtract out the estimated star, and keep in mind, this 29,093 is what we actually assessed or levied. 296,000 is the actual star that we received. So we had a net
Hold on a
of
second.
Hold
We're trying
on,
to get
Mike,
back to the
we
correct
don't have the
page.
slide.
No, no. The other way. Other way. Other way.
Huh.
You gotta go back the other way.
What page? Mike, what page
I
number?
don't know what he's talking about.
My sheet doesn't have page numbers on it.
Because this is,
Looks like that sheet was left there.
it.
Yeah, there's
It
nothing.
says
looks like it's
calculation of
missing.
tax rate on the top. Somebody.
Calculation tax rate? Page 18, book 20.
I don't think you have that.
It's
You don't
missing.
have it.
Keeps going over.
Oh.
It doesn't have it.
I don't have.
It was on this board website, but apparently did not get scanned in correctly, got skipped.
Oh, yeah.
Mike, is it possible for you to share that screen with us?
Oh, good Lord, you're asking me to do that?
Oh, boy.
Because see,
I'm
18
Yeah,
Is what-
great, thanks.
I have here.
We have it on board doc, it's just not on that.
Did you have the wrong PowerPoint?
All right, I can go to Word docs.
Okay.
Hold on.
It's on board doc.
I can go to Word docs. I can do
Okay.
many things here.
All
Hold
right.
on.
Hang
You
on.
can do many
Mike.
things, huh?
I
Hang
can
on.
do many things. Don't worry. I'm quite capable here. Hold on.
Did you click on this one instead of PDF? Not yet, it's not there.
Are you on Board Docs right now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't get the photo when I first got on. I was like, wasn't there. There was a glitch in board docs, because I couldn't get on, they didn't give me help computer, then mine went on.
Oh, there we go. Okay, there it is.
There, Julie.
That's it, Jules.
I'm, what's
It's not
that?
on there.
Mike, can you see the screen?
I got it.
No,
Julie's got
I
it.
have it. It's on.
Julie
the
has
screen.
it.
I know.
I'm quite capable of doing this stuff.
How about now, Mike?
no, it's just white.
Okay, sorry, buddy.
Okay, it's up there now, Mike. Go over the calculation of tax rate. Start again, please.
Okay. I've got last year, the 2022-23 actual column and the proposed column for 23-24. So we always start out with the total projected levy amount or the proposed levy amount in this case for 23-24. We back out the estimated stars that we're going to get. So for 22-23, the levy amount was 29,093. Our actual star that we received was 296,101. Gives us a net tax levy to the taxpayers of 28,797,164. The assessed values that we had gotten from the town for last year when we did our tax rates was 24,868,996. I have not seen any updates from that, so I have to use the same number for next year. The tax rate per $1,000 of assessed value, therefore, is taking the number from line A, dividing it by line B, you get 1,157.95 last year for the tax rate per thousand of assessed value. This year it's $1,232.07. When you come down for the sample, what I'm saying is, for instance, if you took a house, a sample assessed value of $5,375, for argument's sake, you factor that by dividing that by $1,000 to get to the $1,000 per the rate per $1,000 of assessed value, you get a factor of 5.375. The tax rate per 1,000 of assessed value is therefore the 1,157.95 would give you a resulting tax of 6,223.98 for last year and 6,622.38 for next year, which would be an increase of $398.40. And I think that if anybody plugged their numbers into this formula they would get pretty close to what it is. And again, these are all estimates. I don't have all the final numbers. I'm not going to get any of the final numbers. They don't start rolling in for the next year's levy until September through November.
Yeah, Mike, this makes it a lot clearer to understand it.
I hope so. That was the intent.
No, so it's looking like the increase is about $75 per thousand, right?
Times.
That's good.
Yeah,
Right?
I'd have to, I don't know. Let me run my calculator here.
that's like,
7 minus.
here's like another 20, so yes, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's about $74.12 per thousand.
Close enough.
$75.
Good job.
It'll be
75.
75 when you're done.
75.
The town comes in there.
That is helpful.
That's the easiest way to,
That's a great slide, Mike.
it's a good way to understand it, you know? One of the things, you know, I don't like, I'm just offended by the word average Joe. I like, you know, the taxpayer, the community member, or the school district, like to know how to understand this. You
Well,
know?
I'm just looking at it from my perspective, being a CPA,
I know,
my head runs numbers a whole lot differently than everybody else.
I know they do. This simplified it.
Okay, that's what my goal was, Pat.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks, Mike. I feel like I finally understand this.
I hope, yeah, I hope so. I hope it helped. All right, the next couple of slides are just printouts or screen prints. Well, the first one is a screen print of the Zillow page where I got that average for Springs, which ironically, they're claiming that the house values in Springs has gone up by 13.2% in 1 year.
Wow.
Yep.
It's fairly accurate.
It went down from COVID.
It's actually more like 17%.
Is it 17%?
Wow.
The last year, David? The last year or 3 years? Last year?
In 1 year, yeah. Based on the difference in the residential assessment ratio, it's about 17% difference.
Time to buy.
And the year before that,
Yes, I was asking.
The next slide I have is a summary of the tax cap versus the levy trends. I listed going from 2016-17 out to this past year, 2022-23. So you see, these were the actual calculated tax caps versus what we actually levied. And you can see over those 2, 4, 6, 7 years, we levied taxes less than the tax cap, totaling $1,312,384. Now, we're talking to Barbara this morning. She says, what would it have been if we went right to the tax cap each of those other years? So I went back and I kind of calculated everything. Had we done that, we would be looking today at a projected tax cap of $31,132,736 and a projected tax levy, which is $30,955,883, which is what it is today. We would have had a tax cap at 2.17% and a levy would be asking for a tax increase of 1.59% instead of going to 6.39%. Just to kind of
So-
put it in perspective.
Right, Mike, I appreciate you doing that. So you're saying even with our increased expenses and stuff like that this year, we would have been at below the tax cap if we had not cut the budget in those years when we did?
That's what I'm saying, yes.
All right.
Excellent slide, Mike.
Okay. The next group of slides, this is where I'm giving you the 5-year projections like I've done in the past. So it's just a summary cover page, then the 5-year projection. The first one is the appropriations. So you see 2022, 23, then 23, 24, which is what we're actually asking for this year. And then going from there, I'm just trying to roll it out. I took the salaries. I know what the different salary schedules look like. So we're able to project the salary schedules out to 27, 28. Ironically enough, because of people getting higher up in the on the salary tables and maxing out. They're not going to get more increases for steps. And we're also anticipating quite a number of people possibly getting to that point in their age and in their careers where they're ready to retire, which then drops them from the high salaries down to the starting salaries. And we're going to start, you would start seeing some of that, those step increases starting to narrow down. So anyway, I'm looking at across the bottom, the proposed expenditure budget as a percent from the year before. 678 was last year, 875 is this year, but next year I'm anticipating it to be 2.1, followed by 2.29, and in the last two at 2.17. But again, that's assuming that inflation doesn't do anything more than it's done already. And there's no guarantees there, as we know. The next page is the 5-year budget summary for revenues. Again, same thing. I just increase them a little bit each year, like by 2% on a lot of these, to kind of give us an idea of where we might be. I'm trying to look at how we're going to be able to save, and instead of being over 2 million, trying to bring the appropriated fund balance portion lower and lower and closer to a break even. But we're looking at a tax levy anticipated increase over each year. 546 was last year, 639 is what we're asking for this year. Going out, it'll be 257, 241, 241, and 240 respectively. The next page gives you a little bit more of a summary that shows the anticipated tax levy versus the calculated tax caps. And again, going out in the 5 years beyond, I'm not anticipating the need to pierce any of the caps going out the next 4 years. But you can see the red column on the red box underneath the 23-24 year that we have to pierce the cap. Any question on that group of slides?
Mike, you predicted this piercing the cap, what, a couple of years ago?
And here, and the next page also has this same summary. What we did last year, where you're seeing where I had predicted the tax cap was going to need to be pierced this year.
It's at 3.9 though.
It was at 3.9, but keep in mind, we didn't have the inflation like we had this past year. Inflation just went hog wild. You know, we were down, when I first did it for the 22-23 budget, we were looking at inflation. We were looking at tax, the inflation and the tax cap being less than 2%. We were looking in the low ones for the CPI back then. Now we're up at 9, in the 9% range. That makes a huge difference when you're looking at some of these percentages moving forward in the next year. That's why this report needs to be updated every year, so that you can pick up those little changes and nuances that happen in the economy. The next slide is your 5-year calculation for the tax cap itself. And that's, you can see where these numbers came in the previous slides. And that is the end of my portion. And I've got important dates. The budget and property tax card adoption is April 18th. The next budget hearing is May 9th. And the annual budget vote and trustee election is May 16th.
And about April 24th, I think, is the drop dead date for the
adoption.
Printer, to get to the printer. So if there's any other changes, we need to make them before the April 18th budget and property tax card. Because we have publications.
We need to get that out sooner rather than later to make sure people get it.
Well, the 18th, after the 18th board meeting, we can run with all the charts. We have our letter drafted and points of pride drafted already.
Yeah, the night of the budget adoption meeting, we'll also be presenting in that spreadsheet what the impact, if the budget is defeated, what a contingent budget would look like, and it is not pretty.
Well, there's a step before getting to the contingent budget. You go out for a second.
Well, there is, but again, yes, there is. But again, we have to present with part of the budget adoption. We have to present what the contingent budget total would be, and how much money we would have to cut to get to that, contingent budget.
That's required by law, right, Mike?
Yeah, yes.
Excuse me.
Is there anything the board wants to see Mike change? Do you want to drop the tuition down? This does not include any retirements. That's your general meeting. You will have a couple of retirements.
Yeah, we could save some money somewhere and you can show it away. I wouldn't mind looking at it, you know. If you have projected retirements, how it's gonna affect it. I know it's a few, 30,000 here, 40,000 here, there's a huge difference. 100,000 doesn't bring a lot of percentage down, but it brings down part of it, or 200,000.
Would you like to see us get it under 6?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
I mean, there's 20 extra students, which in reality is we have to add up because the high school is increasing. And we put a lot of the needs in here, I know you did. You know, we get.
I'm not balancing this budget
Not
on the spring students. And Barbara's point, when we started to look at the numbers, Mike and I, what a mid-year cut would do to this school, to these children, we have to pay the high school tuition. We'd be looking mid-year to make significant cuts that I just wouldn't be able to make that recommendation. But I think there might be some work that Mike and I can do, especially given the fact that, on next Tuesday, you will be, not next Tuesday, the Tuesday after, you'll have some retirements.
And can we look at it with maybe a buffer of 15 instead of 20? I honestly, I hadn't thought about the fact before about sometimes there are students who don't graduate in time, because I'm thinking about the 12s are moving out, the 8 from here moving into the 9, but that is certainly a possibility. And especially over the last few years, I mean, we've seen learning loss from COVID here, right? And with the younger kids, it doesn't mean it's not happening with the older kids also, especially if you have people coming in. That's really a lot, definitely not as settled as it hasn't really been at the forefront of my mind when thinking about the high school population, and that's certainly something that we do need to be considering.
And there's a big push now for vocational training. And we don't pay more for that. That's part of our high school tuition. But we are seeing more and more students take the time to go to BOCES.
Right.
And that might mean an extra year at the high school, but think about it. It's something that they're gaining a skill and coming out with being able to work versus having to pay for that program, such as nursing. They have a
Culinary.
culinary, veterinarian. It gives them a skill set that they can go out and maybe go to work and go to school.
That's like put a high school on a 5-year plan.
Yes.
And I don't think
If you don't graduate, you get to stay.
right, but wouldn't you see that, but it's the high school's job, or any school's job, is to see that kid progress, right? If we know a student is failing, we're gonna see that come out of general education and go into a hybrid situation. I don't see many students from the general education move to hybrid situation. If the school is doing their job, the high school is educating their students, and they see the students are failing behind, why are you failing? Well, I can't keep up my studies. Well, then we have to get you extra help. In an inclusion classroom, you would see the general population come down and the hybrid situation go up. Because their goal is to get them out in 4 years too.
But because
Whether they do a culinary school or vocational school.
Because they're not succeeding doesn't mean that they're special education. We've seen students with huge gaps in their education for various reasons.
Right.
COVID being one of them, but also maybe not being in school for a year or two, depending on where they're coming from.
Oh, we have the numbers for East Hampton to support that?
The numbers,
East Hampton, how many kids are in the after school? Well, it's actually a night program, right?
that's not in addition to the day program, that's instead of.
Okay, so how many students?
How
many students does East Hampton have between 18 and 21? Or 19 and 21, 19 and 21.
Right.
I can get that number.
And how many students from Springs are staying additional years other than graduating on time? What's the average for that?
Because a lot of times the school, if you're not, I think the high school does that, is if you're not succeeding in your special classes, auto mechanics, art, they pull them out, you
Yes.
get pulled out of them.
Yes.
Culinary, you're not succeeding in your regular general education, those extra programs are not part, you get pulled out of them. You can't say, well, I'm gonna do culinary for 4 years and then do my English and science.
You have to be in good standing. You're absolutely right,
Right,
Pat.
so
But
I think can't put so I'm just saying, I think you might have misworded that wrong, maybe. Of these kids that stay next year to graduate because they're doing culinary and vocational.
And you can't stay out of the choice to do that.
no, but you have to have taken your other courses first. But let's say you're enrolled in a 2-year program.
Right,
You can stay to finish that 2-year program.
a nursing program
Yes,
with a high school,
yes. Because you're looking to graduate, so,
graduate high school,
yes,
but not get a degree in college through that program, right?
not a college degree.
But they
Getting a
don't need-
vocational-
yeah, so I'm just confused about it.
So there are vocational programs that are 2-year degrees that you're getting through high school, is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
yes.
Okay.
So if that student only started that program as a senior, they would be able to finish the program. I don't know how many of those students there are.
Gotcha. So that is not repeating from a grades or a failing thing. It's needing to stay because of a program that they started taking later in. that
Right,
they
and there's
picked up
only a recent push, so I'm not gonna be able to get the numbers I think that Pat's saying.
later.
There's a recent push now for more vocational programs.
Gotcha.
And that I can find out from the high school is where that prescribing is. Are we up in the number of students going to BOCES?
Right, so that's something we should be tracking every year. Do we have are there Springs juniors or seniors who are going into these programs? And if they're going into a senior year, then that means they're actually there for another year, and we have to know that
We
because
have to know that.
Yeah,
that's, you know,
It's only in the recent couple of years that there's been that push again for vocational.
Do you remember after the budget was adopted last year? I know we were talking number of students that weren't planned, with their costs, but just, we can look at number of students because I think it's easier. How many were there that after the budget was adopted, went to East Hampton High School that we didn't plan for last year?
I'd have to look that up on that enrollment sheet.
Right.
April tends to be our busiest month, and we've already seen that. We've had 6 new registrants just this week alone. They're not all, I think it was 1 high school student. But just in 1 week to spring school, 6 new registrants.
Right, but last year, was it like,
I believe we had 7 new people, not at the start of this year, but the start of the previous year. I think the
Right.
number was 7. And we did not include any additions in this year's budget, did we? When we made the,
No,
last year we were doing that. We did,
we didn't, but the buffer was in special ed
right.
and in the
so you have to
hybrid.
carry it to
But
that.
at the start of 21, 22, and in that year, we had 7 additional students in the high school.
right? The memory I have is that we made it by the skin of our teeth with
Yes.
shifting one
of
to the other.
Yes, yeah. So that year was 7, and this year it's 22 new students?
22 to today.
Just as of now, it tripled.
And April, as I said, is still our busy month where we see an influx of students.
Really?
Always has been. That's been consistent.
And you weren't thinking March was just April early, did you?
That's what I thought. I thought because of the weather being mild and, planting starting and people, coming out to work earlier. I know the traffic's been horrendous. I think it's a little early for what we're seeing in traffic. So.
Well, I gotta say, I'm sort of struggling with the high school question because I think what's best for our school is to have the higher number there, certainly. But, it's a tough ask. And we do want to set ourselves up for future success with our budget, certainly. We don't want to be ever, we don't have to do this again because once again, we get hit with like a bigger influx than we anticipated, right?
The biggest goal I think we were talking about is that those surprises don't impact the programming for the students. The most direct frontline interventions that we have, the curriculum itself, all the day-to-day experience of the children. I think that was the main intention. So is that safe to say that if we're looking to revise this budget anyway, that's the last place we look?
To programs here,
Right.
I think so.
There's
But on the other
nothing to
hand,
move in our program.
do you end up affecting it if you don't have enough of a buffer at the high school? Because then it comes, if something happens next year, and then we find that we have to cut program here anyway. I don't know.
Because you kept all programs we have, you added the LNS, you added a few programs that we needed, we didn't have, right?
Excuse me?
You've kept the programs we've had in place.
Yeah.
You added programs that we needed in place,
Correct,
that weren't in place before.
correct,
And you recommended we keep them and put them in place.
correct. Don't touch spring school.
And we did that last year. Was it the year before when we changed the special ed
Yes.
model, thinking that this would, be cost effective and it would work, and it turns out it didn't work.
Last year at this time, we came to the table and said we were gonna pierce the cap, and the direction was come in at the cap. We cut a lot of things. If you look at that slide from last year, there was a list of things that together, everybody agreed we would cut. 2 special ed teachers was one of it. We didn't hire the additional custodial and maintenance. We were gonna make do with our new facilities, but we knew that we needed that. Mike has a list of those cuts that we made, and this year, I just couldn't go there again.
Well, yeah, no.
But another clarification though, are we, there was some talk, I think I heard, if we're trying to get under 6% and, having Mike and Deb scour the budget, if we're asking that, and I don't know if we are, but if that was, I think we were talking about that, the idea in my mind would be to stay as far away from the programming as possible. I don't know if there's reserves. If you look at the buffer, that we've been talking about, I don't know where it's coming from.
I wanna look. I added up the 10 students at the high school in gen ed is about $245,000. If we can shave that by 100,000 because of what we'll be saving with 2 retirements, we're replacing those teachers.
Yeah.
But you'll be replacing them at a much lower salary. So even if Mike shaved off $100,000 off that high school tuition because of what we're saving on the
Yeah, it was a
retirements,
couple
would that help? Would it bring us under 6%? I'm not sure. I'm not the numbers person. He's my numbers person.
Well, and the other thing too is we were talking about some of the reserves, like the repair reserve and the capital reserve. I don't advocate for that for the simple reason it's not going to be too far out into the future that we've got to convert all of our buses to electric buses.
Right, that's another 300.
You're talking about a bus right now that runs for about 120, a bit large bus, it goes for about $120,000. That's going to shoot up to about $350,000 to $400,000. And I'm not even talking about the charging station to go along with it here. That's just for the bus at today's prices.
There's no way.
So that's why I tend to be cautious with any of the reserves, because we're trying to build reserves and keep them there for these rainy days coming that are going to be coming up pretty soon.
So I think you're out of the reserves, Mike. I mean, there is things we happen we don't know about. I mean, perfect example, we had no students, that extra students, but the classroom was a big hit. That was a lot of money, and somehow you found the funds in there through reserves. But there was a couple of things, not programs, a couple of areas in that budget that I think we can look at. When we look at custodial maintenance, I think we decide at this year is more important to go for custodial staff and not, and lower down, keep the maintenance the way it is, the maintenance department. Not hire somebody that's not picking up outdoor equipment as it was required, which wasn't even in the budgeted number, it was just for the employee. For outside, and we were gonna look at that, we will also go, when did the bids come in for outside landscaping here?
I believe Mike has that for
In the new
Mahoney's.
bids,
We said it was gonna be a wash.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a wash. If you don't spend it in staff, you're gonna spend it with Mahoney's because our current contract doesn't include all the things that we need done.
Well, some of, when Mike presented it, when I thought it, and Kevin presented it, when we looked at it, I'm not gonna go into detail, Mike can go into more, is let's look at the bid for Mahoney's, put it back out the bid again, we have some cultivating to do. Like the maintenance of the fields is always done by, we pay the outside agencies for that,
Yes.
whether we're doing inside,
Landtime.
in-house or out of house. the maintenance of the baseball fields, that was outside the house too. We was never part of the house, so the number was a little inflated. So if you get that real number of what we were really looking at, maintaining the landscaping here, keeping up with that, if we start a garden club. Back then, we used to do the courtyard, we had a garden club in the courtyard for years. She retired and it wasn't picked up. Where we could.
Like I said earlier, when I met with Steve Harding a couple of times and talked about the need for additional maintenance / grounds person, the courtyards would be a big piece of what the grounds person would have to work on. It's an internal person then. This way we don't have to have Mahoney running their equipment through the side doors in through the building to get into the courtyard. We'd be able to control it ourselves. Plus, if we use a grounds, have a guy that can do part-time grounds, part-time maintenance, like in the wintertime, he's going to be there to help Kevin and Brocky out with a lot of the maintenance needs to keep the boilers up and running, to keep the unit ventilators operating properly, changing filters, all those kinds of tasks that need to be done that take time.
I understand that, Mike. But also, the maintenance division is a fairly new division to what we're doing for the school.
It is, and I'm trying to see that we maintain things so that we don't have situations like we ran into with that floor collapsing, because we're not able to get to certain things and maintain the building in general to a proper standard.
Oh, I understand that, Mike, but I'm saying maybe this is not the year to look at, see what the maintenance department, run the maintenance department, look and see what we need. We have 3 on staff, just to get our maintenance done. What do we need to get done? We have some money in the capital reserve to cover some of those expenses. Not bring on an employee for another year at least. But with a 6% increase, next year you're looking at a 2% increase. It might be more favorable next year to go in that direction.
Okay.
Mike, can I ask you a question? That if the math is too crazy, you just tell me, don't worry, we'll do it some other time. So right now we're looking at a 6.3% number. If the theoretical ask here is to try to get it under 6%, let's call it a 0.5% reduction in the budget. If taxpayers are paying $75 approximately on every 1,000, what would that 0.5% equal due to that number?
That's a lot of calculating to filter it through. Let me see if I can run something quickly.
We start to talk about,
In a way, are we, is it nickel and diming in a way?
right, the taxpayer, you're looking at $74.12 per 1,000. If we're doing what we're saying that we're doing, and obviously if there's room, we need to do our due diligence to make a proper decision. But there is due diligence, and then there's forcing an issue for the sake of optics to go under 6%, and it could cause damage later on. What does that actually mean? What's that 0.5% to the taxpayer?
Is it
on the 1,000?
$10, or is it?
Right, does it drop them to $65 per 1,000?
Yeah.
Does it drop them to $70 per 1,000?
I'm gonna have to run it through my models. I can't do it real quick math on that. I've got to run it through my forecast models to give you a better handle on that.
Thank you. I just looked at enrollment. 2021, you had 332 students at the high school. March 15, 2022, you had 352 students at the high school. So it was 20, just that year alone.
We had a large 8th class that year.
Yeah.
Dude, this goes back to that question.
Yeah, so 2021.
Right.
32 students. 2022, same time of year, 352. Currently, we're at 374.
Yeah, I had in my head 22, but I wasn't sure. So it was 20, or was it 20?
It was 20 from 21 to 20 to the year 22. 20 students right there.
Was that because of the increase in size from what was leaving the 12th grade and the 8th graders coming in also?
Yeah, we had one year that was
large.
large. Yeah, it was like, almost 100, right? 90 something.
Yeah. So it's not always necessarily new students moving in, it's also the size of the class that's going in here and the size of the class that's leaving. Okay, so Mike, so Eric, that was a really good question, because I think it does help to know that, do we do something as for a budget, it's gonna have a actual minimal impact on people's,
And it's important for the taxpayer to know. I know I was nervous, just from my own taxes. We live here, and you want to do what's best for the students, but you want to be responsible with it. And that number that we talked about, that $74.12, that it gave me some comfort knowing, what we're doing and what it means to me as an individual. And then if you see what that money actually does to the school and for the community, and we have over 1,000 students that we're supporting here, I think that makes that does things for house values. Even if you're just looking at it in that perspective, you have a successful school and a successful community. It pays you on the back end, and we just need to make sure that we're spending this money in the right way. But if you do that, it impacts the whole community, whether you're a parent or not.
And I agree with you 100% on that. We do have to look at, our job is to look at every little nook and cranny. I mean, that is our job.
You have, you've done
Yeah, I'm
that,
just saying, yeah.
you've done that in the past. It's at a certain point that the sacrifices you make,
Right,
are gonna,
but you go back, we talked to the public about when we did the new edition. They were wonderful about it, and it took us a while, we got it. We also told them back then, we're probably gonna add another employee. We added two, but, so we're just, we also gotta be, fruitful when we tell somebody what we said.
right, but the school grows which we have no control over,
Well,
so
I
you
understand
do
that.
have to add other employees, and you have
No,
to.
you have to have staff, you need staff for teaching, yes.
One of the biggest things I learned this year too is just don't think of the impact of the high school. You think of us as 700-ish students, not 1,000. That was a big awareness for me.
Oh, send it to us during the week so we can take a look at it. Well, you have 2 weeks, right, Mike?
Yeah, I just quickly was looking on my worksheets here, and if I take $250,000 out of the property tax line, it will drop us from a 6.39% to 5.53%, but it's only about a $10 decrease in the tax rate itself.
1,000, okay.
Per 1,000 or overall?
Per 1,000.
So,
what would the percent be, Mike? 5 point what?
5.53%.
And that's taking out 250,000.
That's, yep, taking 250 out.
So 100 of that could be the savings in teacher retirements, and then another 150 from high school tuition, which we probably.
Yeah, because if we change the high school tuition to, instead of going up by 20, go up by 15, you're looking at a savings of about 123,000. And then whatever retirements you have.
Okay.
yeah.
Want us to do that?
Yes, what do you guys think?
We got to land for that.
The high school tuition ones are still a tough one, because we did see the increase of 20 every year.
Yeah.
We did see that. That's a reality. Do we see an increase next year? Who knows? We don't know what's happening.
Well, let's also see what it looks like.
We only tried the enrollment reports for 5 years. They didn't work. We never.
Oh, by the way, the demographics report is expected probably by the end of June from East Hampton, and that will include Montauk, Amagansett, and Springs.
So Mike, maybe let's just see what the percentage looks like if you're when you figure out the difference with the retirements and that salaries, what that looks like. I mean, we're saying we'd like it to be below 6. This is half a point below 6. Maybe it would be just below.
Without touching the high school?
Without touching the high school. Let's see what that scenario looks like. And
Okay.
again, back to the person, even if we're not hiring someone, you're saying it's really a wash. There's no budgetary savings because we'd be spending that money to Mahoney's or whoever is.
That's what we're estimating.
Will you estimate that on Because we just get confused sometimes, salary with benefits and everything, the whole package, or just the salary? You doing the whole package for that employee, Mike, or just the salary of that employee?
We're talking about the whole package, salary and benefits.
What are we paying Mahoney now? We're paying $100,000 a year? What are we paying Mahoney now to cut the lawns?
About
30,000?
38,000 per year.
We still may have Mahoney cutting the main lawns though, right? Because
Yes.
Yeah,
I don't think there's no way that he can take care of the whole maintenance, so we're still paying the 30,000, right?
Yes.
So you're saying it's gonna take another 100,000 to have him cut cultivate the bushes out there and,
yeah, I know
Anyway.
Kevin got a quote from him on that, and I know it was pretty high. I can't get my fingertips on it.
just a little more information on that, Mike, would be helpful,
Yeah.
okay?
Yep,
Sorry, Mike, but
Anyone here on the board have any more questions right now?
I don't.
Okay. So we will open up for public commentary right now. So LTV, if anybody wants to call in there, so public commentary is for our Springs residents only. If you have a question about the budget, please come to the podium and say your name and be recognized.
You go to the podium.
There you go. You have a time limit, please, so,
All right, first of all, let me apologize for not calling in last week and disappointing.
Yeah, we didn't want it. Whatever you
Like
want.
that, huh?
So surprised.
We know your four numbers.
Okay, let me start off with something positive. The discussion today showed that you are sensitive and you are responding, and you realize that this is not the final budget that you have in front of you, because I found that the proposed budget in the worksheet documents that were posted tonight was unacceptable, and I believe that more than 40% of the voters would agree with me. So you need to continue to work on making this budget acceptable to a majority, to a supermajority of the public voters. You were proposing nearly a $3 million increase in spending, 8.75% increase. You were proposing a 6.4% increase in the tax levy and an average $400 increase in tax per property. So let's put that aside because you are still working on it. Necessity is the mother of invention. There are things that you have in this budget that simply should not be there. You have two positions that were not filled last year that you've carried over and that can be reduced. You have an underestimate of the amount of interest that you're going to earn, even though interest rates have gone up. I know it's only a matter of maybe an extra $35,000 that you should anticipate, but there's no reason not to do so. Your numbers with the high school, on less than a month ago, you were projecting and proposing that you plan for 376 high school students. Now you're kicking that up an extra 18 to 20 people. There's no reason to do that. You need to budget for what you can reasonably anticipate based on the numbers before you. You do not budget for things that you don't expect to happen and that you can't expect to happen. You maintain the right to have up to 4% of your budget amount as a rainy day fund. You may have to use it to spend if you get an influx of students unexpectedly. You want to now budget and tax the taxpayers for something that you can use that $4 million rainy day fund for if and when it happens. I suggest that you consider that's the appropriate approach to deal with a possible influx of high school students greater than the 376 that you had anticipated in your worksheet number 3 on March 7th, which is just a month ago. You have, actually, people should realize that at the K through 8 level of schooling, you actually have only plans for 632 students. You had a peak of students back in 2016, 2017 at 727, and it has come down consistently over that 7 or 8 years. It's the high school where you have this influx of students and an increase of more than you anticipated, and you have to deal with that. I appreciate that. But the school board owes it to the district taxpayers to use all available means to keep the proposed tax levy under the state cap. If the necessary savings can't be found by squeezing some of the fun stuff out of the budget, then the district must allocate the greatest possible portion of the unassigned fund balance, i.e. surplus, that will remain unspent at the end of the current school year. Last year's audit showed that you had $1.4 million of budgeted funds that were not expended. Mike was indicating in the documents, if I read them correctly, he anticipates $700,000 of money that will not be spent that you budgeted for. In other words, your budget was in excess of what you needed. And that is frankly the standard practice, it seems to be, for school finance budgeting. You budget more than you need, you collect a surplus, and then you kick it over to the next year. What that means is that you always have more than you really need. When you look at the audit, if you look at the documents that you have in front of you, you have $4 million in reserves. Though the state allows you to have the 4% as an unassigned rainy day fund, but you have $4 million as specific reserves that need either approval to be spent or special authorization, or they have to be spent only in accordance with the reserves, the reasons for which those reserves were established. I understand that. But the rainy day fund needs to be spent when it's raining. And baby, it's raining outside right now. So you cannot hope to have 60% of the voters pass a budget that has such a tremendous excessive amount above the state cap. So why don't you look really hard at what is necessary to spend some of your $4 million in specified reserves, such as for capital and repairs. You had that discussion tonight, but you seem to say, well, there's too much trouble. We have to perhaps have a line on the budget, asking for permission from the voters to spend some of those reserves. Do that. They would appreciate that. If you have more in reserve, this is now $4 million in current reserves, above and beyond the 4%, which is about $1 million, that you're allowed to keep as a maximum contingency. Obviously, the reserves were established for good reason, but now's the time to consider whether you need to retain them all. You have adjustments that you're going to make concerning people that are going to retire and the difference in salaries. That's something that you should have looked at a long time ago. That's so we don't have this horrendous and frightening prospect of a budget that grossly may be proposed to exceed the state cap, which is 2.14% increase in the tax levy.
Oh, Mr. Buda, thank you very much. You've made quite a lot of points. Can you wrap it up, please?
I will wrap it up. Also, it's high time for the school board to tighten the belt when it comes to employee benefits, especially for those who are no longer district employees. I was shocked to read in the June 30, 2022 audit report that the district carries on its books a liability of more than $40 million for future payment of post-employment health benefits. It's time for the school board to take a look at that element of your contracts. It's really something that is so far into the public workplace, and it's really something that you need to save money on, and that's funds for post-employment medical benefits. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buda. A contract is a contract. That's what those things are entered into like that, and that's yeah. So you made a number of points, and I would just say that our job is to propose the best budget that we can for this school, bearing in mind our taxpayers. But in times of difficult decision, we may have to ask our community, what is most important to you? Is what's most important to you what we think the school needs best to have to best serve our children, or is it financial? And that is, that is a public referendum. And we have not done that before. And it seems like this year is in fact the time to do that. And then our taxpayers get to say what they have, what their thoughts are on that. So I think this is a very tough decision this year. And I don't know that it's up to, 5 people to be making that in this particular year. So I don't have a problem asking people to pierce the cap if we're doing our due diligence to bring things down where we can and to make sure we're not jeopardizing ourselves or future by using reserves when we should not, or by jeopardizing our financial standing for any bond ratings, which having all of those reserves go into that. Those are very important to have, not just for rainy day, but for a district's financial stability, and it's very important to bear that in mind. So at this time, does anybody else wish to have a question? We have someone here, and LTV, if anyone calls in, please let me know. Thank you.
Hi, Christy Amanda. I just want to start by saying that, Barbara, I really appreciate at the last meeting you pointing out that by giving that cushion to the possible high school enrollment, that you are maintaining things here. And although, Mr. Buda thinks that we're over budgeting, I think that if we look at 2 different years of having 20 kids and 22 kids, that's pretty reasonable to expect. So I'm thankful that you guys are looking into this. The one other point to something that Mr. Brabant said was that I actually have a meeting scheduled with Ms. Winter to discuss the stipend for courtyards and an ability to possibly get teachers that would lead some fundraising efforts and some efforts to get people in the community who'd be interested in doing some of that planting maintenance for the new plantings as well as the courtyards. So just another possible way to go about that, because we do have a wonderful community here. So if we can get teachers to have that stipend, which is not an expensive stipend for the teachers, then we'd have somebody to coordinate getting the volunteers in to do some of that maintenance. So that's something that we'd like to, be able to help the budget in that way. And so I just thank you for all your work. I really think that slide showing that, the sort of, you guys have referred a few times to like the money left on the table, saying, well, we haven't gone up. And of course, I've appreciated the fact that we haven't gone, up. And I think that's been a service at the time. But, like the quote that you had in the newspaper, it's like, at some point, it's going to come due. It's unfortunate this is the year. I believe in our community. I believe that we're going to have the voters, without a doubt, know that you guys have done everything that you can. And whether it ends up above or below 6%, I have a lot of faith in our community to pass this. And thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you very much. LTV, if anybody calling in there?
And we have 0 callers at this time.
All right, thank you so much. So we still have a little more work to do as we are hashing this out, and Deb and Mike will do a little bit, and Mike will work his magic and get back to us very soon. Mike, I really appreciate how you're able to pull this together in a week since we last saw you.
He worked hard.
Yeah.
I worked until after midnight almost every night.
Oh my gosh, no, we really appreciate that. Thank you. So if we're no longer have any questions here, do I have a motion for the board to go into executive session?
Motion.
Second? All in favor? Aye, great. Thank you very much. Have a
Thanks
good
for coming
evening,
down,
everybody.
David.
Thanks a lot, Mike. LTV, are we off?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
Jane, are you keeping
So
that?
this is a private session. Yeah, we're not recording anymore.
No, actually, we're going into another room anyway, so just wanted to make sure that we weren't being recorded live for
Like, I
anything.
swear, I cannot get that page on my computer. I was like, am I imagining it? That page is not on.